Some people make too little dopamine. They need prescription dopamine.
두 종류의 사람이 있습니다. 새로운 시도를 두려워하고 일을 시작하지도 못하는 사람. 새로운 시도와 도전을 좋아하고 하나씩 일을 해치우는 사람. 성공하는 사람은 후자에 가깝죠. 성공을 이루고 싶다면 최소한 각종 소셜미디어나 자극적인 영상의 노출을 피해야 합니다. 성공하는 사람들은 인간의 감정과 동기부여에 깊이 연결되어 있는 도파민 같은 호르몬을 이해하고 잘 사용할 줄 아는 사람들이기 때문입니다.
Because dopamine really is about craving. It's about motivation and it's about desire.
어쩌면 매일 지식을 쌓고 동기부여를 받아도 결국 해내는 사람과 해내지 못하는 사람의 비밀이 도파민에 있을지도 모르겠습니다.
Much of what comes from the data on what people eat and how much they eat is from a subconscious detection of how many amino acids and what the array, meaning the constellation of amino acids, is in a given food. And it's fair to say that sum total of these studies point in a direction where people will basically eat not until their stomach is full, but until the brain perceives that they have adequate intake of amino acids.
아미노산은 근육을 형성하는 데 중요한 영양소입니다. 근데 이것보다 더 중요한 이유가 있습니다.
Amino acids, of course, are important because they are the building blocks of, sure, muscle and the other things in our body that need repair. But what most people don't realize is that amino acids are what the neurochemicals in the brain are made from. Now, this is vitally important.
근육을 키우기 위해 충분한 단백질을 먹어야 한다고 생각하지만 운동하고 싶은 욕구를 주는 도파민을 위해서 먹어야 하는 게 순서상 맞겠네요. 일반 상식선에서는 알기 어려운 도파민의 역할이 있습니다. 무드와 관련된 건데요.
L-tyrosine is the precursor to a couple other molecules like L-DOPA, etc., that make dopamine. And so there's a misconception out there that most of the serotonin is in our gut and most of the dopamine is in our gut, and therefore our mood is in our gut. Dopamine is synthesized from the amino acids that you eat. However, the dopamine neurons that give rise to these feelings of good or wanting more or desire and motivation, those reside in the brain. So we don't want to get too confused. We want to respect and honor the power of the gut and this vagal pathway, but it's really neurons within your brain that drive the pursuit and decision making.
도파민이 어떤 역할을 하는지 알려면 도파민이 고갈되었을 때 증상을 보면 됩니다. 파킨슨병은 도파민의 고갈로 인해 생기는 병입니다. 우울증을 기반으로 하고 있는데 몸이 떨리는 증상과 더불어 행동과 말에도 영향을 미치죠.
Some people make too little dopamine. Some people make so little dopamine that they need prescription dopamine. They need L-DOPA. People with Parkinson's take L-DOPA and other compounds to increase dopamine because Parkinson's is associated with deficits in movement. It starts as a tremor. Parkinson's is a depression. It's a blunting of motivation and mood and affect. And it's a tremor. And then eventually in severe conditions, it's challenges in speaking and walking.
L-타이로신이 함유된 식품, 건강 보조식품을 섭취하면 도파민의 건강한 분비를 도울 수 있습니다.
And as I mentioned, these amino acid sensors in our gut are detecting how many amino acids, but they're also detecting which amino acids. And there's a particular amino acid called L-tyrosine, which comes from food. You can look up online which foods contain L-tyrosine. It is in meats, it is in nuts, it is also in some plant-based foods.
도파민 수치를 음식이나 보조식품을 통해 올리는 이유는 안정적인 감정 때문입니다.
People can develop Parkinson's, and Parkinson's is a depletion of dopamine neurons in the brain. And it's not just movement challenges, it's challenges with mood. Now, hopefully most of you, all of you, don't have Parkinson's, but it's clear that dietary L-tyrosine supports the healthy production of things like dopamine, as well as other factors within the brain. Now, some people immediately ask, well, should I supplement L-tyrosine? So let's just talk about that because that's going to come up. Full disclosure, I sometimes take L-tyrosine. I'm not taking it right now, but I take it only occasionally. You can buy this in capsule form. It does increase kind of mood and elevation and alertness. It is over the counter. You have to check with your doctor. I'm not responsible for your healthcare and I'm not a doctor.
추가로 우울감에 도움되는 보조식품입니다.
I think most people are familiar with it in a different context, but I don't think most people know this simple fact, which is that the omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acid ratio has a profound effect on depression. It has a profound effect on mood. First of all, in an experiment done in animals, they found there's a model of learned helplessness in animals. It's not very kind to the animals, but they put rats or mice in a jar, they let them swim, and they'll swim to try and save their life, and eventually they give up. So learned helplessness. They don't let them drown, they take them out. Adjusting the omega-3, omega-6 ratio so that the omega-3s are higher led to less learned helplessness, meaning these animals would swim longer. Okay, that same study was essentially done in humans, although they didn't have them swim to the point of near drowning. What they did is they took people who were clinically depressed, major depression. Okay, major depression is severe maladaptive state, meaning it inhibits job, relationships, appetite, all sorts of negative health effects. And they did a comparison of 1,000 milligrams a day of EPA. So EPA is one of the elements that contains high levels of omega-3s that's in things like fish oil. But it wasn't 1,000 milligrams of fish oil, it was 1,000 milligrams of EPA. Compared that to 20 milligrams of fluoxetine, which is Prozac. Okay, really increases serotonin. And in this study of 60 individuals, they found that they were equally effective in reducing depressive symptoms. So imagine that. Food-based compound that you can't make without, right, was as effective as 20 milligrams of fluoxetine over the course of 8 weeks. And what was really interesting, in addition to that, is that the combination of 1,000 milligrams of EPA and fluoxetine had a synergistic effect in lowering depressive symptoms. I find this remarkable. The effects on mood are really profound.